I'm here with Richard Heinberg of the Post-Carbon Institute, Senior Fellow. Richard, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, and you, Aaron?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much, Richard. Your organization has a website called resilience.org. What is resilience?
Well, of course, resilience is the ability of a system to bounce back from adversity. And we think this is a really important topic right now because society is facing a lot of potential disruptions, including climate change and other environmental problems, loss of biodiversity, pollution, um, falling sperm counts in men worldwide. I mean, it's really pretty daunting just what's happening on the environmental front. Then from an economic standpoint, we have created an economic system that depends on endless growth in the economy. And the economy can't grow forever. So what happens, like is happening right now, when the economy stops growing, it really goes into a crisis mode. And we have an over-reliance on debt. So over the last few decades, society has built up just enormous quantities of debt based on the assumption, again, that the economy can continue to grow forever, and therefore future generations will be able to pay for all the stuff that we're enjoying now. So we have a lot of shocks on the way. So we need more societal resilience. That's basically our argument.
So it sounds like you don't necessarily expect that things are going to go back to normal. Is that kind of the perspective you're taking?
Well, looking at the situation now with the coronavirus pandemic, our view is that this is a game changer, and the old normal has been permanently disrupted. So whatever new status quo emerges from this, and there may not be a sort of stable status quo for some time, it's going to be very different from what the world looked like in 2019. And anybody who thinks they know what that's going to be at this point, I think, is probably kidding themselves. We're in a very unstable period and probably will continue to be for some time.
So what would you say right now is kind of reducing resilience?
Well, resilience depends on things like dispersed inventories and short supply chains and lots of redundancy in the system. So if you have a problem in one place, it's not going to affect the entire system, and you can call upon inventories located elsewhere and so on. Well, we've created over time a pretty unresilient economic system by chasing away inventories as much as possible, just-in-time supply, and lengthening supply chains to take advantage of cheap labor and raw materials on the other side of the planet. So what's happening right now is we're seeing a lot of those supply chains, long supply chains, being disrupted. And that's over the short period taking resilience out of the system. It's causing a lot of problems in many fields, manufacturing, and of course, obtaining medical supplies is one of those big concerns. Over the long run, though, this could result in more resilience if we start to rebuild shorter supply chains and start paying more attention to inventories. One of the things that's making society potentially less resilient, I think, is just what we're doing by necessity, relying more and more on the internet and electronic communications for just about everything, including provision of all kinds of supplies, the Amazonification of our economy. So this is centralizing a lot of our activity, our information, our distribution of goods. And that creates a new level of fragility because the internet depends upon all of us having electrical power 24/7, which in and of itself is questionable. We do pretty well right now supplying electrical power, but there are foreseeable circumstances in which power might not be universally available all the time. Then, as everything is online, that creates the opportunity for more piracy, malware, and just people looking to take over and profit from a more centralized information system and system of payments and so on. And it also creates more opportunity for the hijacking of these systems by authoritarian regimes. So it's understandable why things are going the way they are, why we're moving toward a few giant companies distributing all of our goods increasingly through artificial intelligence and drones and so on, a more and more centralized system that's squeezing out human labor, but it doesn't necessarily create a more resilient system over the long run.
It sounds like you're talking about a move towards more peer-to-peer interactions.
Right. If we're going to build a more resilient economy, then we're going to need more direct relationships between producers and consumers, between collaborators. And that's possible to achieve via internet, electronic communication, and so on. But if it only exists at that level, then again, that's a fragile or anti-resilient situation to some extent. So we have for a long time advocated building local economies as much as possible with face-to-face interaction between producers and consumers, because that builds a more resilient system. Now, of course, face-to-face interaction is no longer possible in many situations. Again, for perfectly good reasons, but that's one of the factors that's reducing our societal resilience. So the sooner we can find workarounds that don't necessarily involve, spending more time online looking at screens, the more resilient our situation is likely to be.
So what can individuals like myself or a viewer, what can we do to increase our resilience?
Well, one thing you can do, which is what a lot of people are doing right now, is to grow a garden, produce more of your own food. And as you're doing that, stay in touch with your neighbors, whether it's through the telephone, through, shouting over the fence, whatever it takes, just saying hi as you're out walking, not necessarily, getting up close and personal, but, notice who's on the sidewalk, say hi, maintain cordial relations, and get to know who's in your neighborhood, who needs attention, who might, be interested in some extra radishes you're growing this season, or whatever. Just start sharing more. This is a really, really important time for paying attention to each other's needs and sharing.
As you say that, I'm thinking about a few things I've done in the last few weeks, which is just to knock on each neighbor's door and then back up about 10 feet and
Right.
just when they come to the door, just ask them if they need anything.
Yep.
And how they're doing. And in fact, yesterday I talked with a couple neighbors again from it was even further apart, 15 feet, but we could still hear each other fine. So,
Yeah.
but just to make sure that they're doing all right. And one of my neighbors has kind of shared some of the things that are a challenge right now for her. Richard, I'm curious, what can people find on the resilience.org website?
Well, it's a daily updated website with lots of articles from authors all across the world that presents kind of an international perspective on who's doing what in the resilience world. Some of them are more philosophical articles. Some of them relate to, on the ground efforts. A lot of my stuff gets published on resilience.org. And one thing we're doing right now is we're offering free a course that I helped to produce called Think Resilience. It's 22 short videos, and I think it's a terrific introduction to ideas about resilience, sustainability, systems thinking, what you can do in your community to do a community resilience assessment, the kinds of shocks that are headed our way in the future, and how we can prepare ourselves. So again, that's available for free right now.
Great. Well, Richard, thank you so much for talking to us today, and I hope the rest of your day is a wonderful one.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Same to you.